Clock Nation Speaks, your Baltimore Ravens podcast, where we talk about the best team in NFL history. If you're a Ravens fan, I am a huge Joe Flacco fan. Wise Usher once said, "Situations will arise in our lives." I'm talking about shut down. Like you're not throwing on Jimmy Smith. Joe is criminally underrated, lock him up in cuffs, criminally underrated. Lamar's put this team as a top 5 offense for the first time in 20 years. Got the arm talent. Jay Cutler had it too. I don't care about this argument against total TDs and all this. Oh, you want to talk about defense? Oh, until next time. Good people, we are back at it again. We as in me, DJ, your host, back at it again as Fly Nation Speaks, your Baltimore Ravens podcast, where we talk about the best team in NFL history. If you're a Ravens fan, of course. And real quick, let's just jump right into this Ravens Browns preview. Of course, earlier in the week we talked about Ravens Seahawks and how that went, and I'm hoping the Ravens and the Browns game go a little similarly. Okay, that's the hope. That's the hope. That's what I'm hoping for. That's what I'm reaching for. That's what I want to see. Okay. The last time the Ravens played the Browns, it was 28-3. I don't think Deshaun Watson played that game, if I'm not mistaken. And it was a pretty dominant win for a team that I don't even know against the Browns. It felt like they played at the best of their ability. It's crazy. The season goes by so fast, and sometimes it's like, sometimes it leaves you thinking like, how did the Ravens play in that game, right? Like how was that game comparatively to the rest of them throughout the season? Because it just feels like it's been so long since that game, and I know it hasn't really been that long, but like and maybe it's because the bye week is so late too. Like the bye week is so late this year with week 13 bye week and all that too. So maybe that's what it is. But real quick, Fly Nation Speaks is on all major podcasting platforms. We're going to get right into this preview. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, not Anchor. Anchor's not a thing anymore. Spotify for podcasters is a thing. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter as well if you want to watch or listen, whichever ones you want to do. Pick your poison, pick what you like, and then let me know which one you like. But anyway, let's jump right into it. The Ravens versus the Browns, and I heard the news, I heard the news that Myles Garrett, as of right now, within the confines of this season, is taking Joe Burrow over Lamar Jackson. Silly man. But anyway, he can do whatever he wants to. It's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like sometimes this is weird to me. Maybe he was just saying, maybe he was adding fuel to the fire. They play him this week, and stuff like that. But like, if I'm not mistaken, earlier in the season, the Browns beat the Bengals, and I'm talking about beat the brakes off the Bengals. So it might just be one of those things where you're trying to discredit the opponent you got coming up, and then at the same time you trying to give credit to another team that you've beaten. You've already beaten this season, right? So maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's a little friendly competition, a little words smithing, if you will. But interestingly, it's weird because I think those things change from time to time, especially when you're put on the spot. He was on Up and Adams, when you put on the spot, I think that thing changes, and facing them this week, I think it'll be interesting to see what this offense does against the Browns defense, because the Browns defense is a top defense in the league. At the time that the Ravens played them last, they was a top 5 defense in the league, I know, and they probably still about that. Besides the Ravens game, I think defensively they played pretty well. So another big defensive test for the Ravens at home, where I think prior to this year, historically, we felt like the Ravens have kind of been a little flat at home. So, I think it'll be interesting. I think these next couple of weeks will be interesting, especially with the Browns and then the Bengals at home. It'll be very, very interesting to see what the Ravens do. Is the Chargers game the last of that stretch? I think it is. But it'll be very, very interesting to see what the Ravens do, and if they come out flat, if they can keep their momentum going throughout this entire stretch because with a week 13 bye, you got to be getting tired at some point, right? So like I expect a couple of flat games where maybe they even just they don't turn it on initially because even last week, as crazy as it seems, they didn't really score until what, the second quarter or so. So that was another thing too. Like they didn't really score until like the second quarter. It was the second quarter when they found their groove. It was the second quarter when it was like, okay, now they finally getting it going. And I think you can see, don't be surprised if the Ravens come out flat. Not necessarily in this game, just in general. In any of these games, especially before the bye, they've been traveling a lot. They got this home stretch, but I mean, I think they still got to go out and take care of business. And I still feel like, especially in the AFC North, the Browns are not the Browns of old per se. And we saw, let's be honest, we saw that the Browns are not the Browns of old because they lost their quarterback and still came out by hook or by crook and won games. So, that means the Browns are not the same Browns that we're used to playing. But the Browns have always competed against the Ravens, and I would love to see another 28-3 or even more on the scoreboard for the Ravens this week, especially because it feels like back then, what was that, like week 2 or so? I think it was something like that. Like back then, the Ravens were still trying to find their offensive identity, right? They were still trying to find where this person fits with this person, right? They were still trying to find if they were a running team or a passing team, or if they were balanced. They were still trying to find their defensive rhythm too back then, right? But we talking before that game because they found a little bit of momentum just in that game. So now that the Ravens have established a little bit more of an identity, a little bit more of an offensive rhythm, I think this could be a big game for the Ravens, but I would not be surprised if this was a tough game for the Ravens because the Browns are a talented team. They've been talented for a long, long time, and especially over the past couple of years. And as they get healthier too, it'll be interesting, right? It'll be interesting. I feel like it was week 2 or week 4 or something like that, but it's crazy. It's crazy to see. It's crazy to see. I think coming into this game offensively, keys to the game, right? The Ravens gotta play a clean game. It's one of the things that's been so hard to come by for the Baltimore Ravens this year has been a clean game, right? Has been a game where they came out, didn't turn the ball over and move the ball down the field. Like even just imagine last week, right? Last week you put up 30 points, but at the same time you still had turnovers, right? You still had fumble. I think they had 3 fumbles last week. Like even with that, you still putting up points. So the thing about it is, if you button that stuff up, I think it could be. I think this offense could get that much better. The defense could probably even play that much better too because you're not putting your defense in a bad situation as well. So offensively, first things first, play a clean game. Play a clean game and let's see what happens. Right? Let's run an experiment this week. Play a clean game where you don't botch the read option play, right? The mesh point, right? Or you don't, there's no interceptions, no fumbles, stuff like that, right? The protection holds up or something like that. Like I dare the Ravens this week to play a clean game and see how it goes because I'm curious. Right now, they're piquing my curiosity because I'm sitting here thinking if the Ravens play a clean game, they can set everything on fire, right? The whole league. Right, they can set the whole league on fire. But these are the games, especially the tough AFC North games, where as Ravens fans for 20 plus years, we've been sitting here waiting on the greedy game where it's going to be just, the Ravens got to change the trajectory of the AFC North for themselves, right? I think that's how that has to be. I think the Ravens have to come out here and completely change on offense. I'm talking about, because it's funny in the AFC North matchups, especially with the way the Bengals have been, the way the Steelers have been, right? Over the years, we know, the Ravens Steelers matchup, how that's been, and especially with the Browns, because the Browns haven't always been the best team in the world. The thing about this AFC North is somebody's got to change it, right? Somebody's got not change what the AFC North is. I'm saying somebody's got to kind of put themselves above the rest. And this is a perfect opportunity. These next 2 games, especially, we talking about Bengals, we talking about Browns. If the Ravens can come out and one of these games, I would like to see the Ravens blow one of these teams out, specifically, maybe even the Bengals more than the Browns. But, like just to showcase your dominance, right? Showcase your dominance. That's what has to happen, right? That's what has to happen. you have to find a way to showcase your dominance in this game. What's up, Justin? Shout out to my boy Juggernaut 007. Check out his channel too. But like, you gotta show your dominance, man. You like, this is that game, right? These two games. There's two coming up that and there's some other important ones. It's not just the AFC North that's important. Through this stretch, I think the Ravens got a lot of not prove it games, but just like, this a tough game on the schedule where it could go either way, and you need to ensure no doubt that it's not going either way. But we'll see, we'll see. But I left y'all last time talking about this offense and some things that I had saw on social media, because some people had posted some things about some things other people were saying, and they give their thoughts, and it was interesting. So I thought I would bring them up real quick with the kid Gowie. Shout out to him on Twitter. He was talking about Lamar Jackson's MVP campaign, right? And we've talked about this before. Lamar Jackson has been a guy who's had to be a huge part of this offense, right? Like, a huge part of this offense. The biggest part of this offense. 90 some percent of the offensive output has been on kind of Lamar Jackson's shoulders. And this year has felt a little bit more balanced, right? It's felt a little bit more balanced. First in completion percentage, which, is crazy, because I'm kind of keeping tabs on that number right there, the completion percentage number, just because, as weeks go on, he threw, it was 80% last week. So it is kind of interesting. Second fewest in INTs. I know we had the fumble issues and stuff like that, so that ain't been the greatest thing, but appreciate it, Justin. Definitely like the video and subscribe. And if you listening, heart the audio or whatever y'all do over there, y'all do something hard, favorite the show, whatever it may be. But 14th in passing yards, 20th in rushing yards, 8th in total TDs, which I would like to see go up a little bit more. It's tough because on one hand, the Ravens fan in me is like, let's be honest, right? The Ravens fan in me, and probably the Ravens fan in y'all, is probably even a Lamar fan to a certain degree, trying to shut up the Lamar doubters, I should say, right? For me, I'm like, I want that number to go up because I want him to win MVP, and I want him to showcase what he can do. But at the same time, I'm sitting here thinking, as long as we score, who cares, right? So it's tough. And with the total TD thing, the interesting part about that number is, and I said it, I think a couple weeks ago, but the interesting part about the total TDs number, Lamar doesn't put up as many TDs as everybody else would, because the Ravens gonna turn around and hand the darn ball off when they get to the red zone, and we know this, right? We know Gus is gonna gobble up all the touchdowns, especially if we get to the red zone, because they is not throwing that ball in the red zone, especially not so far, especially if you give the ball to Gus on like first or second down, like it's all over for you trying to get your points in. But anyway, tie for the best record in the AFC. Not just the AFC North, the AFC, which is, and we talked about it before the season started, the AFC is so friggin' top heavy, dude. The AFC is so top heavy. And of course, with Aaron Rodgers going down, that, some injuries here and there, that's kind of hurt some things. Some with the Chargers not playing as well as they've been playing, the Bengals having their slow start too. Like, it's kind of been not an easier road, but like it's shaking up a little bit different than we thought it was going to shake up. And leading the toughest division. I would say that too. Definitely the toughest division because everybody's over 500. I don't think you can say that about any other division in the NFL, right? I don't think you can say that about any other division in the NFL. I think that's it. I think it's the AFC North, and that's it. And we've been talking about how tough the AFC North has been for, Lord knows how long. Chiefs Kingdom. I should have Justin, I should have had you on to talk about the AFC. And maybe next week we'll get together and we'll talk about the Chiefs and the Ravens and the kind of landscape of the AFC a little bit too. I know Justin's starting his For the Kingdom podcast, talking about the Kansas City Chiefs. Also, he does wrestling content as well. So, I think we should get together next week, Justin, and talk about that. But I saw something else, and this one's interesting to me, right? Justin, y'all haven't played y'all haven't played y'all's best. I don't think either. And that's the crazy part about it. Like the AFC is top heavy, but I don't think everybody's played their best either. I don't know why my camera just don't want to work today, but the AFC is very, very top heavy, man. Like, who's coming out of the AFC, you'll never really know. And I think these next couple months gonna be big to figure out who's coming out of the AFC too. But Eric Mangini, who I think said something about Lamar a while back too, like if I'm not mistaken, maybe I'm tripping him up with Bill Polian, but I'm gonna play this video. Shout out to Bobby Trossett. He had clipped it and threw it up on his Twitter or X page. And shout out to him. He I think they talked about it on the vault. Him and Sarah Ellison. So I want to play the video, just give my thoughts. I'm trying to see if did he put any. Okay, let me play the video, and then what I'll do is I'll give. So you'll probably hear it already.
Streak made you come around.
Yeah, look, I love his completion percentage. I think it's fantastic. I don't love his 9 touchdowns. He's got 9 touchdowns with the new system, and in his MVP year, he had 36 touchdowns. And when you look at it, he's got the same amount of sacks as he had last year. He's carrying the ball the same amount as he was in the past. His interception rate is essentially the same. The reason I'm coming around on Baltimore is what they're doing defensively, not what they're doing offensively. And if we bring up, if you look at what they're doing, it's almost every statistical category they're first or second, and that's why they win. And then I know we want to look at this and say Lamar has changed dramatically as a passer, but okay, if 9 touchdowns through what
9 games,
if that's the benchmark when we've seen him throw 36 touchdowns through 16 games, I'd say that we're not really hitting on all cylinders.
So that's an interesting clip. I'm trying not to play it again. That's an interesting clip that he put, and let me see real quick because I might agree with some of this stuff. I don't want to knee-jerk react real quick. So Bobby Trossett said over its 4-game win streak, Baltimore has outscored opponents 130-49 with just 6 LJ8 touchdowns. The Ravens are winning games without 8 having to be Superman, which he has been for the Ravens for like literally the past a bunch of seasons, 5 years, you might as well say. The Ravens are winning games without 8 having to be Superman. Instead of being a pure scorer, he's distributing the football as Todd Monken's point guard. That's a good little analogy right there. To judge him based off a metric like number of touchdowns without providing any context, I love that line right there. Without any context for all the production around him that he is directly facilitating is laughable. So FS1, what is it called? First things first, I think it's called. Yeah, first things first. So let me get my thoughts on this. And we'll talk about it. So I'm gonna scroll up so I can see the quote one more time. Oh, it's right there in my front of my face. But anyway, he says he loves his completion percentage and he thinks it's fantastic, but he doesn't love the touchdowns. Now, I said, I said this earlier in the show. I'm gonna say it again. And I hate to be the guy who says, well, you're not watching all the games, right? I hate to be that guy, but sometimes you got to be that guy, okay? Because, yes, when you stat sheet look and you're just looking at the box score, you see only 9 touchdowns. But let's not forget the Ravens, I don't know. There's no true stat on this, I don't think. I don't know this right off the top of my head. But the Ravens probably run the ball in the red zone more than any other team, or at least they're in the top of the league at running the ball in the red zone. Some of those become touchdowns for other players that is not named Lamar Jackson, right? Whether that be Le'Veon Bell from years past, Latavius Murray from years past, this year's been Gus Edwards. There has been over the last 2 games, I think the last 5 touchdowns, not the last 5, but Satan, the game before the Bengals game, the game before the Seahawks game, right? So the Cardinals game, Gus Edwards had 3 touchdowns. And then to start the Seahawks game, Gus had 2 touchdowns, right? So, and a lot of them were from the red zone, if not all of those were from the red zone. So, yes, Lamar Jackson gets a lot of his touchdowns taken away, for lack of a better term, when the Ravens turn around and hand the ball off to their running backs. So, yeah, that You don't love his 9 touchdowns, but Lamar Jackson, I think, has a far bigger impact than his numbers will ever say. You know, Lamar Jackson was not the top yards getter in passing yards performance based quarterback when it was his MVP season. It was efficient passing and it was scoring with the football. And some of it, especially as of late, has been the Ravens turn around, hand the ball off, let their offensive line go to work, and Gus Edwards is not falling backwards. And when I'm 2 yards away or even 5 yards away, it's a little easy for Gus Edwards to just waltz right in. Keaton Mitchell showed off his speed, right? You know, like the passing touchdown, I think the lone passing touchdown, if I'm not mistaken, that came in the game against the Seahawks was Tyler Huntley throwing to Odell Beckham in the fourth quarter when Lamar Jackson was sitting down to begin with. So, I like how he said, I like how Bobby Trossett said, context matters, right? Context matters in all of this stuff. Context matters in everything. Like, people like to cherry pick stats and cherry pick numbers. I think it was funny because somebody was trying to compare, who was it, Baker Mayfield, I think, to Lamar Jackson and his numbers. My computer going dead. They were trying to compare Baker Mayfield to Lamar Jackson, and on pure numbers, they're comparable, but it's deeper than pure numbers, right? We talking about impact. We talking about, first things first, we probably should talk about team belief in you, right? Impact. And at the same time, we talking about a guy who literally has been over 90% of his offense for his first 5 seasons in the league, at least from year 2 to year 5. And now in year 6, there's weapons around him, and the offensive line is playing a little bit better, and the running backs are going and scoring touchdowns, right? But that was a thing even last year, right? Even the year before, when you had no running backs on the roster, running backs were still taking touchdowns from Lamar, if you want to say it in that way. So he said in his MVP year he had, this is Eric Mangini one more time. In his MVP year he had 36 touchdowns. The reason I'm coming around on Baltimore is because of what they're doing defensively. Now, he can preach on that one, right? He can preach on that one because I'll tell you this. He can preach on that one because the defense is playing lights out. The defense is playing lights out, but this is the same offense that's scoring 30 points on everybody they see and every good defense they look at. They scored, only 28 against the Browns and then 30 on the Seahawks, and that's just the 2 games I'm thinking of off the top of my head. Don't do that. Don't do that now. Don't do that. Don't do that now. Mayfield, bro. But it's just crazy, man. It's crazy because, like we talked about it before, everybody keeps moving the goalposts, right? Everybody keeps moving the goalposts, and now with black quarterbacks becoming more the majority than the minority, it's harder to move the goalposts on every one of them. So we got to kind of pick and choose and cherry pick which ones we want to move the goalposts on. But anyway, I appreciate you guys for tuning in. I'm gonna try to go tune into this Thursday night football game. Hopefully the Panthers get their second win of the season. We'll see. We will definitely see what they do. If y'all watching this later and y'all like, what? Just don't be surprised, okay? If they come out and win against Tyson Badgett, I'm not going, I ain't going to even say nothing, okay? Because there's nothing really to be said about the Panthers right now. But anyway, that's a whole nother struggle for a whole nother day. But definitely hope you guys enjoyed the show. We'll see you guys on the next one real quick. Financial Speaks is on all major podcasting platforms: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Pod Chaser, y'all know them all. Y'all know them better than I do. But anywhere you find your favorite podcast, make sure you add Financial Speaks to your favorites. We'll see you guys on the next episode of Flock Nation Speaks. Until